Jody, why do you think so many people struggle with waking up from their autopilot lives?
Oh, the autopilot-itis. Yep, super common. I think we struggle because we come by it honestly. We're wired to get into a very comfortable routine because our bodies and our minds like homeostasis. It's comforting. It's like a warm blanket and it's cozy, but then we don't even realize that it's smothering us and suffocating us. And then all of a sudden we're gasping for breath and we don't even know it that we've, ended up numbing our lives and boring ourselves to almost death, right? So I think with autopilot, it's that we get into these routines that are very serving. They're very smart, and make us feel productive, and we get to go through the motions and turn our monkey minds off to all the cacophony of insanity going on around us. And we need to do a little bit of that. But then all of a sudden we find ourselves 3 months later going, wait, what month is it? Or like, it's Thursday. Like it's no different than Wednesday, which is no different than Tuesday. And we're these highly functioning zombies. We come by it honestly because we're wired to acclimate and to adapt. And so it's our little problem we have to work to overcome consciously every single day.
So, it's interesting because what I've been thinking about a lot lately is that our brains like things that are predictable. So if we can just have the same routine, the same habits, our brains feel that that is what is keeping us safe. And just to getting out of that, as we mentioned, like autopilot, that comfort zone is hard because in every ounce of our body is telling us like, no, we should keep the status quo. We shouldn't, move forward. We shouldn't try to do anything because at the end of the day, that's what helped us made it this far. From
Well,
an evolutionary
great point.
standpoint.
Right. Yeah, we can train ourselves into thinking it's because I go through these motions that I have gotten to where I am in life. And we also believe sometimes it's a societal norm that a responsible adult is one who goes through those motions of I drive to work and here's my routine for work and I do this and then I make salmon and broccoli on them and then I do this and then I have this. This is what we do for my workout and my date night. And the routinization of it can be actually healthy when we're establishing a new healthy pattern or when we do need to get going on a goal. But I think we need to tune in when we're finding ourselves glazed over with, have we not had enough variety or novelty just to shake things up every now and then? So some people have a more natural tendency to want newness, and some people really just like things to stay the same. You're either a neophiliac or a neophobic or somewhere on a spectrum. And that's cool. Like, I'm not here to suggest that you never have a routine again, because I think then that would wreck your life, which is totally ironic. Like, we want to enjoy our lives before we die. But I do think it's just about subtly saying, wait, where am I letting my life just sort of pass me by? Because I am just going through the same routine again and again. If it is the same route that I take to work, what if I did take a different route home and I saw an interesting new cafe and I said, well, then on Saturday, let's also break up our Saturday routine and why don't we go and check that out? Or what if you always do the same thing for your vacation? What if you shook it up this year just to try something different? And you can go back to your routine next time. So I think that we're talking about one aspect of living a life worth living. And I think the novelty factor is something we overlook as a really low-hanging piece of fruit right there for us, nice and ripe and ready to pick and eat and go, wait, this is one of the things that helps us to feel more alive, even if it is something that might feel initially a little bit uncomfortable to break out of that kind of rut. Because that's what it is. I'm just going to say a habit and a routine feels comforting, and then it can turn into a rut. And then, one of my favorite quotes ever by Ellen Glasgow is the only difference between a rut and a grave are the dimensions.
That is a powerful quote because it really showcases exactly the difference between what we're living now. Is pretty much the same, just we're just going to be living these autopilot lives until we just take action, which for many people after when they look back, it's like, man, I was just almost like Walking Dead. I was just going through the motions over and over and over without even living our lives. But I love your reframing, or the way that you can find a way to see it from a different point of view, or even uh, uh, define or trick your brain. It's like, hey, what if we add a little bit of novelty here and there? Because even me, I just do it because it's my life is simple in that way. I eat the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I keep the same thing. I don't mind doing any other things. But even if you add, well, what if I tried something new today? Something small. It could be taking a new smoothie or even going to a restaurant. Any small that it starts instead of going from your comfort zone, jumping all the way to your danger zone. What if we just start taking baby steps and into the stretch zone and start stretching that comfort zone, and we're just expanding over and over and over until we can look back after 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, like, oh, I'm now in the danger zone that my self 3 years ago would have never imagined being.
Yeah.
And just having those moments.
Yeah, you even used a word there like about stretching yourself and widening, and that's the way I look at our lives is I talk about widening and deepening our lives. And so the widening aspect is with the concept of vitality. And that's with different experiences and having fun and pleasure and just getting out there and doing cool things that just interest you. And I'm not here to prescribe it. It doesn't have to look a certain way or be the frequency doesn't have to be every single night you're out. I mean, that sounds exhausting to me. But it is about the dose that's right for you to still feel like I showed up and I'm alive. Like if, for example, if you got to the end, which is always my litmus test, it's like that thought experiment of, would you have that feeling of, oh man, like I didn't have enough chicken and waffles for breakfast. Like I really wish I shook up my routine just a little bit. Or, but again, if your rice checks every single morning is the thing that makes you feel so happy and alive, then don't mess with your rice checks. Maybe it does mean maybe your thing is that you want to, adjust another dimension of your life, right? It could be that you're bored with work and you really need to maybe take on some new projects, or maybe you do need to actually change your career and summon up that courage to make a change or go back to school or learn a new language or do the thing. Just again, trying different things so that we feel like, have we lived the width of our lives by the time we get to the end?
Yeah, I think many of us intellectually understand that life is short. I think most of us do. It's like, okay, we get it. We get it. But we still struggle to take action. And in your opinion, what's the biggest mental or emotional block that keep us on that autopilot life? So from that point of us not wanting to do anything
Yeah.
crazy or
Yeah.
yeah.
It is by far fear. And I'll share with you that I think we dupe ourselves into thinking that it is because of other reasons that are also valid. I think a lot of us, we will, what I call like postpone our existence. We delay our lives and our dreams and our goals because we do this thing where we say, I'll do it later, right? I'm busy right now. That's the number one. And I'm going to wait until maybe things quiet down at work a little bit, or I'm going to wait till I retire to do that thing, to travel that thing, or to start my business. I'm going to wait until the kids are out of the house, or I'm going to wait until I have, a different time frame when, like, what we're doing is we are punting all the potential joy because of the goals that we long to reach, because we believe it's that we're busy and we have more time. So we dupe ourselves into thinking that there is going to be a later. And I'm not here to say that life is short, you could die tomorrow, although let's be honest, we all know this too, you're right intellectually. But what I'm more concerned about is that what is the thing that is making us feel like we are going to say, I get to do this cool thing later? It actually feels just good enough. So there's a lot of research in psychology about this. It's called positive fantasies, where you think, "Ooh, yeah, I'm gonna start that business. When maybe it'll probably be in like a few years when things at work are quieter, and you get to feel just excited enough that you have that dream that you are packaging up, and it still exists and it's potent. And you might feel bad that you haven't done it yet, but it still feels like there's potential and hope. Whereas it takes a lot of courage to actually say, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do it now. Because to do it now means you're going to put yourself out there. You're going to risk feelings like rejection or failure or any kind of other emotional upheaval, which is a great reason for us, again, back to homeostasis, is to say, I'm just going to go through my life now, and then I'm going to do it later. Later is this alluring temptation of a place that we get to postpone because we're chicken. And I say this because I'm the number one chicken. Like, I'm the number one person that is absolutely, I mean, I write about this and talk about this from stages because I need to be reminded about, honey, get on with living. Like, stop postponing the cool things you want to do because you're scared. Do it today, or at the very least this year, because who knows what's in
Yeah.
store, and why would you be leaving life on the table now? Why would we be selling ourselves short?
Yeah, I think uh, but if we do that almost with anything in our lives, it's like if we have a work project that is due in a month, I still have a month, and then oh crap, it's like due in 2 days, and then I'm just gonna kill myself for 16 hours just to make it happen, and then it
Yeah.
works because I think when we have the sense of urgency,
Yep.
it just bypasses any kind of fear that
Yep.
we have.
Yeah.
But do we have that in our lives? Like, okay, you're a big proponent of we have roughly 4,000 Mondays if we live all the way to we're 80, and that is a big number and a small number as well. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
big number if you think about it. Well, if I procrastinate with things that are due in a month, which is 4 weeks, I have like 1,000 times more time. Well, I guess
Yeah.
less, but still have a lot of time. And then as you said, we're gonna do it tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. And we're
Mm-hmm.
just trying to avoid
Mm-hmm.
that emotional charge in our body, whether it's fear, whether it's
Yeah.
anxiety, whether it's like anything. It's like, how can we just we're going to feel it. That is going
Yeah.
to, I mean, that is, but how can we reduce that emotional charge on our body so it is easier for us to take action and to move forward?
Yeah. We have to trick ourselves. And that's kind of the game I play here, which is getting fancy with counting how many Mondays we have left. We have to startle ourselves just enough to go, ugh. Like, we need a little bit of a poke in the ribs. I don't want to start an existential crisis for us. I mean, a miniature one is actually effective. But what we need to do is provoke the deadline that you just talked about. Because you're right, we will procrastinate because we just keep thinking later, later, later. And I love the power of a deadline. So let's talk about that deadline. And the words are literal, deadline. So I know I have 1,758 Mondays left. And it's still, like you said, some days it feels like a lot, some days it doesn't. I calculate how many more Mondays that I have in my working career. Like, I don't know when I don't know what retirement will look like exactly, but I have an idea about when I'd like to be able to say, it's optional. And I look at that and I'm like, I don't know what the latest number was. Like 600 and something Mondays where I go, oh my gosh, like, I got to get cracking. Like, there are some cool things I want to do that I've been postponing because I'm a little bit fearful about, will it work? Or what will people think of me? Then I go, wait a minute, this time is tight. And the concept in psychology is called temporal scarcity, where we do tune into this literal scarcity of time that can sometimes motivate us. So that's one trick, but for some of us, it's more potent than others. The other one, and it's this thing where some people have been given what I call the gift of a near-death experience. And I don't want to be too flippant with it, because people who have had a brush with death, like a really tough diagnosis for their health, or they've been on the precipice, I recognize that it can be very harrowing. I also recognize through research and experience in working with people that it can be the wake-up call that they maybe didn't even know they needed, but they're living with more aliveness. And so here we are, the rest of us walking around who haven't had the distinct pleasure of facing an almost near-death experience. We have to rig it. And I'm not suggesting we rig it like flatline ourselves and then have someone give us an AED and bring us back to life. I'm saying we have to really do some thought exercises of, what would it be like if I did almost get in that car accident and I was in the hospital in a coma and I got to come home? What would I be looking around going, wow, this is precious. These are my priorities. These stupid things I was worried about before, that doesn't really matter. Like, we have to play these little head games with ourselves in order to get reoriented to the fact that we do take life for granted, and we do want to be more mindful of what we want to savor and how we want to spend our time.
I like that. And when you were giving that example, I thought about how a lot of people talk about how you manifest, that you think about something in a way that your brain doesn't know what's real and what is um, a product of your thoughts. So if we can use the same tool to tell ourselves that we just had a near death experience, and then our time is limited, if we truly believe it in our body, because I think that's the biggest difference between, we cannot know it once again intellectually, consciously, but our body doesn't believe it yet. Once we believe it, it gives us that sense of urgency without us having to have to go through that specific moment. I don't know if I guess it's possible, but
Yeah.
it would it would be kind of tricky to just do it. But at the same time, I feel, and this is as somebody who has felt a lot of anxiety in the past,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I know that you talk about the you your talk powerfully frames the mortality as a tool for living
Mm-hmm.
fully. But how do we
Mm-hmm.
balance that awareness of, hey, I have, as you said, in your case, 600 something Mondays of work,
Yeah.
or 1700 Mondays of life,
Yeah.
of our limited time, without letting become a source of anxiety or pressure?
Yeah. 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 I love your question. And some of us are more predisposed, like you said, if someone
Yeah,
already has anxiety, or let's just be honest, death
yeah,
anxiety is its own unique brand. I recognize that this is
yeah,
like, can I breathe into a paper bag right
yeah,
now? And I
yeah.
know we're toying with
Okay.
something that is really tricky. And so here's my thought on this, because I obviously think a lot about this, and I think it's an important question. We need to dabble in the discomfort enough to have that wake up, like almost like we're splashing cold water on our face. And then we need to pivot pretty quickly, and not in a defensive way, because I am very careful for us to not deny the idea of death. I don't want us to ignore it and move on, because that's when, again, we live a life where we just stick our head in the sand and think we're going to have time to go to the Galapagos later. But what we need to do is be conscious. And it's actually based in some research where there's a difference between death reflection and what's called like mortality salience, which is a fancy name for just kind of, seeing a funeral procession go by, where you kind of go, ew, you don't even know it, but it may make you anxious. Or maybe counting your Mondays without analyzing it might make you feel a bit anxious. You stop. A death reflection is really stopping and thinking, what does this mean for me? How do I want to focus on living? So you'll notice I want us to flip the script pretty quickly. And again, not defensively, but I want it to be conscious to say, all right, I acknowledge I'm temporary, just like the flowers in the vase, just like my cat. Damn it, I wish that my cat was not temporary. But like, we all know what's coming. And let's acknowledge that. Let's be bummed about it. But let's now say, okay, in light of that, how do I want to live? How do I want to do this life justice, so that however many remaining Mondays I get, maybe it's more than what I calculated. Maybe it's way less. I don't know. But what would energize me? What would excite me? What would make me feel like I'm proud to be alive? What would make me feel like, ooh, I did this thing that is a little bit scary, but I felt like even if it didn't work, I'm so darn proud I tried. So I think that it's that we're not sitting in a pity party about, oh, we're so mortal, sucks to be us, and calculating it every Monday and getting more and more depressed every Monday as the number goes down. It's, yeah, let's now move over to the what do we want to do about it phase, because it's supposed to be very action oriented. Does that make sense? Like, do you see that?
I I do, and I think it's right. I mean, yes, some of us will have the propensity of being more anxious, or have more pressure about things that we need to achieve. And you were also mentioning about that, more than a fear of death, we're scared of living, or just we have the fear of living.
Yeah.
And that stuck me. I mean, that stuck in my head for a while. Me thinking, okay, why? I kept
Mm-hmm.
I go
Mm-hmm.
down those rabbit holes in my head for
Yeah.
for a minute, and to me, I realized, well, if you think about it, all the way until probably World War II, we
Mm-hmm.
our life expectancies were not. I mean, were like 30, 40s, and our life conditions were not even,
Mm-hmm.
that great either. Our goal in life, I think, was just to live long enough to have enough offsprings, and then we're just
Mm-hmm.
good with life done. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think our brains have evolved in a sense that now we can live until 80, 90. And not
Mm-hmm.
only we have to survive, quote unquote, and have an offspring, but we have to do, I mean, we were living the best time of our lives in history.
Mm-hmm.
We have everything. We need to find fulfillment, and find, or success, and adds a lot of pressure. I think that a lot of people struggle with mental health, anxiety, and
Yeah.
depression, because
Yeah.
now it's like, well, our brains are not used to this abundance of opportunities and life,
Yes.
and I think that's what it scares us of, living, because now it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I'm supposed to do more with my life, but I don't know
Yep.
what, and it feels unsafe. So I can definitely see that.
Oh, I love what you're saying, Daniel. There are a series of existential fears that a lot of psychologists have come up with, and death is one of them, total annihilation potentially. And then another one is freedom. And I've always found that fascinating. It's exactly what you're saying. It's that sometimes having this abundance of choice can feel overwhelming for us in a world now where the choices are actually growing exponentially, right? Maybe our parents' day was like, my dad got a job and was just happy to have a pension and didn't stop and think about, is this job fulfilling me? Am I thoroughly using my gifts, and am I enjoying my life every day? And so when I talk about changing my career because I want to do the thing that fills my soul, he looks at me and he's just thoroughly confused. Right. So because now it's like we have this, like, what career could we do? Or like all the choices we have in life. It is admittedly, it's a tougher world to be in order to feel like we're finding our perceived life satisfaction. I agree with you. And, all the more reason when we're looking at getting deliberate and saying, okay, so what are the things then that do make me feel alive in this framework I have, which is, am I living wide enough to feel like I'm getting enough of that fun and joy and experience? Am I living deep enough to feel like I'm getting enough meaning? And if I'm not, if I'm feeling a little bit like it's not wide, it's kind of narrow, or it's not, certainly deep, it's feeling kind of shallow, what's one thing I can do in the next month in order to just help offset that? And that's all we can do. I mean, really, like anything, we can only hold one thought in our head at a time. We can only really take kind of one action purposefully at a time. And that is that purposeful decision to live, admittedly, in the shadow of an oncoming death. But again, we've put that in perspective. We're not dwelling on that.
Yeah, I do believe that desire just to feel fulfillment, I feel that it comes from wanting to follow our intuition to some extent. But then it gets tricky because one distinction I've been trying to make in my head is like, okay, what feels like desire and what feels like intuition? Do I want something because other people have it, because that's what a society sort of tells you what success looks like or what you're supposed to, or is truly intuition is something that I truly want to do for myself? And since we live in a distracted world where everyone is just comparing themselves to social media, on social media, I'm one of them, right? When we feel that we're falling behind, and then it's almost like, do we actually want what we desire, what we want, or we just need to tap into that inner voice? Because here's the thing, you have that inner voice that says just pursue this project or pursue that passion, but our reptilian brain, or like our nervous system, like, you know what, let's stay safe, let's not do it. It's that internal battle between both voices. And nowadays we can actually feel like, okay, we have the option and the opportunity to take action and to do things that we should do. But how do we deal with those contradicting voices in our head, that one wants you to stay safe and the other one's like, hey, follow that voice, follow that intuition, or that gut feeling?
Yeah. You're describing, I think, the up and down of everyday life, which is just like the experience of being human. And listening to you talk about this, I think others are listening and going, yeah, I'm so comforted because this is what I do. And I've actually come to have a different view on things, where I used to think I'm going to fix myself, or, I wanted, back when the days when I was doing one-on-one coaching, I would think like, okay, the goal is to help people eradicate their fear, or to somehow like overcome this tendency, when it's kind of like asking a leopard to change its spots. Like, good luck with that. So for me, I'm all about back to acceptance. It's like accepting the fact that my time is limited. Don't know when. It's the same thing about, I'm just going to accept that I'm going to have periods of my life, or it could be on a given day, that I am giving into fear and not taking action. Or I could have a month like that, and hopefully not an entire month or a quarter or a year. But I have to accept that there's going to be an ebb and a flow in our motivation and in our desire. So back to desire, there's really cool information on desire theory about getting clued into yourself. And so the first chapter of my book is this pre-mortem, which is really getting to know yourself, about saying, what do you value? What lights you up? What are the things that make you feel like you have meaning and connection? What are the things you long for? What would be a regret you might have if you did call it quits tonight? Well, not that you're calling it quits, if the curtains were called on you, and you said, oh man, I didn't take action on X, Y, or Z. Those are the inner kind of retreats we have to do, and say, well, if I do try to just get all the distractions out of my mind about what I'm supposed to want, what my parents said I should do, what social media is implying that I should, where the trips I should go, or what I should wear, or the car I should drive, or whatever. I mean, if you can just sort of like just pause that for a minute and get back in touch with what are your values, and then are you living a life that's in accordance to them? For example, if it means being creative, I can think about an example of people I've worked with, and they've worked in big jobs where they're doing cool stuff, but they're like, I kind of came to realize, like, I really just need to be creative. I need to be coming up with something, designing something, or making something with my hands, or even just being innovative. And in this role I've been in, it's about executing the play again and again and again. And yeah, we're doing it. We're doing well. We're making a lot of money and we're doing it. But I feel like I need to express myself creatively. And if I'm not doing that, then parts of me are dying. And for that person or these people, it could be you, it's like that. Well, then how are you living a life where you get to be creative? It may or may not come to fruition through your job, but maybe you need to find a way to say, okay, on Saturday mornings, I'm going to find a way to do something creative. And maybe I'm going to do a creativity tour of, trying different things where I sketch one day, or I go and look at an architecture museum another week, or I go and I make handwritten cards for people, or whatever the thing, when you fill in the blanks for you. But so it's getting in touch with, what do you need and want to feel alive? And then are you honoring that?
Yes, and what's interesting, that when you were explaining this, how even if you are going through the motions at work and you're making money, and then you're just doing the same thing over and over and over, and I think that a lot of people have the blessing, but also the curse of having or being on a high paying job, because again,
Mm-hmm.
they cover all their needs, and they can save, and they can have trips and all, but also they're having like golden handcuffs that for them it's just hard to leave, because, well, if I try something new, if I try to open a business, or if I try to be more creative, am I going to
Yep.
have the same lifestyle? Probably not. But then on the flip side, if you have people that are not making enough money and they're struggling, well, you have nothing to lose. I mean, see that as a blessing, that worst case scenario, you just go back to where you were now. So
Yeah.
I feel the power of reframing, almost it, not almost, I think everything that it happens to us or happens in our lives, it can be seen from a positive and negative point of view.
Yeah.
And I've chosen to see it from more like a positive side. Even we were talking off cameras how I went through a painful divorce a couple of years ago, and that made me reevaluate everything in life. And I've been wanting to do a podcast for the last 7 years, but I only had like a concept, like an idea. I would love to talk to people. I would love to get to know them, learn from them, but I
Yeah.
never truly had the concept like fully formed. And after
Yeah.
I went through the divorce, after went through the whole grief period, I started asking myself, what do I want to do? And the
Mm.
podcast just came back to my mind, like, we
Mm.
need to go there. And that's when I asked myself that question: is this desire because everyone's doing a podcast, or is truly intuition?
Mhm.
And realizing that when I wanted to do a podcast, I didn't know anything about podcasts, or I wasn't exposed to a lot of them. It's like, okay, follow that. But that death of that relationship
Yeah.
opened new possibilities, and that
Yeah.
have I mean, the amount of growth I've had in the last 2 or 3 years have been massive. Did I want that to happen to me? Did I want to go to? No.
No.
But the reframing of life happens for us in a way that is pushing us to follow that path and not waste any kind of pain or any kind of struggle or
Yeah.
any kind of
Yeah.
adversity, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, about how you had this catalyst that you wouldn't have asked for in retrospect, but it prompted you to then take other action. And you're describing, I think, the way that we work as humans, that admittedly we can do this thing where I accept it and go, you're right. A lot of people need either there's a turning point. In psychology, they can call it like a boundary situation. Sometimes it's turning a big number, like a birthday, like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever it is. It could be a rite of passage, like bankruptcy, getting married, having a baby, getting fired from your job, divorce, major things that cause us to have this uh, reflection point about, wait, the life I thought I was living is different now, or what do I want this next sort of frontier to look like? These are all these little mini wake up calls. And I guess the thing that I want to be careful of, because I feel this way, and I spent a lot of time working in a corporate job, back to what you said, like that felt very safe. And I was also stuck and I was unhappy and I kept waiting for something to happen to me. And I wanted there to be some kind of an event that plucked me, that I'd get headhunted, or I would somehow have this epiphany and find this new calling or get to a new company. And, you know, I think many of us are unwittingly waiting for an event to happen, an inciting event that will spur us to action. And admittedly, it's super effective. But it's also tough because then we don't have agency. Because then it's the difference where I noticed your wording about life happening for us. That's the difference between sometimes life happening to us in a way, where it's that, oh my gosh, I got let go from my job and now I have to be the one to go and figure out I want to go back to school to be a veterinary assistant. And then I did that and then that was cool and it changes your life. Like that's just an example. But what about living a life, for example, where if you felt like you were unhappy at your job, you took the initiative to say, I want to make a change and I want to go back to school to be, you know, a reptile assistant and I'm going to go and do that. And then is there a different feeling sometimes about being like, I'm holding the reins. I feel proud that I initiated this change and I'm doing it in a way that's responsible enough. I'm not going to, you know, have to worry about not eating tonight and I'm doing it rather than sometimes that feeling of you're let go, you're scrambling. And I want to just acknowledge sometimes we need the scramble in order to take us to that next level for sure. And that's the cool thing is that just trusting we will adapt to the reshuffles of life. And is there something right now that you would, and I have two questions. If there's a thing you want to do, like for you with the podcast years ago, would you say, here's the question, would I feel proud of myself looking back for trying it, even if it's not what I thought it would be? And number two, would I regret not doing it if I didn't do it? And those are other ways to kind of get to the core of, are you doing the stuff that you want to do? Like fear is going to be in the picture. Let's just like put our arm around it. But like, is it fear that I just have to feel proud to overcome and do anyway? Or is it fear, or is it like just kind of like a distaste? Cause like, I actually don't want to start a podcast. Well, then don't start the podcast, right?
I know. I mean, I hear you, and to me, it's funny because I sort of wanted to do it almost as a hobby, and I always give the same example. To me, having a podcast back then, years ago, was like having a Lamborghini. If it happened, great. If it didn't, you would never see me at 80 years old on my deathbed. It's like, hey, you know what? I regret never having it. But the moment that the divorce came out, and my intuition's like, we need to go. I was like, okay, I guess if I don't do it now, I won't do it at all.
Yeah.
And I've lost everything that I've known in my adult life. I mean, I was with this person for 9 years. My entire adult life revolved around being with this person, and that
Mhm.
didn't exist anymore. It's like,
Mm.
I mean, I have nothing else to lose. Therefore,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for it. But I
Yeah.
did know this. I did, because to me, I never care about having an online presence. I never care about having it, and realizing, okay, it's gonna take me a lot longer than most people, just because in my case, I have to start creating and building a personal brand from scratch.
Yeah.
But if I don't do it now, I know
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
I won't do it. And I think that's when we talk about regret of
Yeah.
moving forward. But I do have funny because regret is hard for me to grasp onto that, because we regret things that we did in the past to other people. So, well, we didn't know any better, so we should be
Mm-hmm.
more, have more self-compassion. But at the same time, I feel that some of the things that I didn't do that I
Mm-hmm.
could have regret led me to other things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very dangerous path for people,
Yeah.
because people could use this as an excuse. I'll give a quick example, not really trying to make people use them as an excuse. But back in college, like 15 years ago, I was friends with a person, and I think we're sort of kind of into each other. I never shoot my shot, and to me, it's like, I guess like we could have had something, but because of that, because I didn't do that, a year or so later, I
Mm-hmm.
met my wife, or now ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
But if it, I wouldn't be here probably talking to you on this podcast if I had started dating that person, just because my life would have taken a whole different
Yeah.
direction. So did I regret not shooting my shot with that person? No, because I can just see now what
Hmm.
that led me. But at the same time, it's like, okay, what things are okay letting pass by, and what things we need to actually do, and that's what
Yeah.
life is tricky, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it is. You're highlighting, I think, the distinction of a couple different types of regrets that are
Hmm.
important. There are those regrets of commission and omission, and the regrets of commission are the things we did that we regret, that we wish we didn't do. And I love knowing that based on research, those types of regrets, we just kind of over time, we tend to just forgive ourselves. You use the word self compassion. I like it's like on our deathbeds, we don't really care too much about the stupid thing we did, good stuff. But what does tend to sometimes nag at us are the regrets of omission, which are the things that we didn't do. And so for you, it's like taking your shot, or it could be applying for the job, or it could be moving somewhere where you thought it would be really cool and you could have had a fun life if you moved to Alaska or something. Those are those, I call them coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And I call them actually pregrets. Because if you're not dead yet, and anybody listening is surely not dead yet, then if you identify a thing that might give you a pang of regret if you were on your deathbed, the cool thing is that holy cow, like you could still probably do it. Because if it is a regret about, oh man, I wished I had gone back to school and finished my degree, or I wished I had learned how to speak Italian, or I wished I had gone and made up with my brother, or I wished that I had been more present and taken up meditation. Well, good stuff. You could start any of those things today. So this to me flips this more back to the action again. It's that we can lament things. And I agree with you. I do think that paths are cool. It's like, yeah, that you didn't do that thing, but that led to the next thing, which led to the next cool thing. Lives are just amazing. And in our lives, all I can acknowledge is we have things that we yearn to do that we're too busy and or code for scared to start because it's just a little uncomfortable to figure out. And so what would you like to take action on that might make you feel alive? Even and not even if it's a little tough, especially if it's tough, because doing something that takes a bit of effort or that does make you feel a little unsure is precisely what satisfaction is based on. Satisfaction comes from effort. You don't just get satisfied because someone dropped cotton candy in your lap. I mean, actually, I would really like that. But we feel satisfied and we feel fulfilled when we've actually pursued a goal that maybe wasn't super easy. So I think it's about, again, tuning in and saying, like, what would be a regret that I would have? Not a regret about an action, but a regret about an inaction. And do I want to take action? Some people, like, for me, I think, oh, I always thought I wanted to play tennis, but I'm like, yeah, on my deathbed, I'm not really going to care too much that I didn't, become a good tennis player. But what I would regret, and I can fill in those blanks, and then that's my choice. Do I want to do something about it starting today? Or do I want to keep punting it and knowing that if you keep delaying it, that's your conscious choice. And that's evidence that we're probably a little bit afraid to live. And that's okay. But notice it. And then you get to say, but is it really a priority? Do I want to, like a lot of people will say, I really want to write a book, but it's really daunting to start. But would you get to the end and feel like you sold yourself short because you didn't? Yeah, I would really love to try. Okay, so what's one thing even just today or this week you could do to feel like you were keeping your dream alive? You're not going to write a book this week. You're not going to get an agent this week necessarily. You might. But what's one thing you could do? Well, I'm going to read a book on how to write a book proposal. Boom. There you go. You can do that this month.
It's almost like using fear as a compass. So when you feel the
Yes.
fear, it's like, okay, that's where I should go. Instead of
Yes.
running away from it, that's where I need to go. It's almost like the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you have been looking for. Just you need to
Beautiful.
just go there. And as you said, it's scary. And one thing that it's been hard for me. I've been trying to get better at it. It's like taking those baby steps, as you said. Well, obviously, I won't write a book in a day. I won't write a book in a week or in a month. But taking those small steps might help me get there. But many
Mhm.
times it is so embarrassingly small. Like if somebody from the
Mhm.
couch and wants to run a half marathon and they start, well, I can run 6 miles or 13 or whatever. I need to start walking 1 mile. It feels so, we feel embarrassed of ourselves. Like, it's like, it's so ridiculously small, but that is the first step that you might have to just take in order for you to do that, or
Right.
somebody who just doing looking at YouTube, watching YouTube videos how to write a book,
Yeah.
feels like, okay, I feel stupid and lame because we're supposed to know how to write. Yeah, but
Yeah.
writing and writing a book are two different things. So it just coming at peace with the fact that the actions that you might take will
Yeah.
be so small that you won't see the end goal, but only when you look back and you see all those tiny steps, you can finally see, oh, now I'm where I'm supposed to be.
This is so good. Yeah, I talk about these things. I call them tiny triumphs. And it's this little tiny, what's the smallest step you could take towards the thing you want? So if it was about the marathon, it's like, well, are you the kind of person that goes online and looks up running shoes? So today, if you spend 40 minutes on your freaking lunch break just going in a rabbit hole of which running shoes should I get, and then maybe this weekend you go to the store to get like have them sort of tell, oh, you're a pronator, you should wear this shoe. It sends signals to your brain that I'm the kind of person who is pursuing my goal. Now, of course, there's the risk that we could be researching for 17 years and not actually like ever going out for a jog to start to run, but we're not talking about that. We're just saying like, what is something that would make you feel a little bit like you get to give yourself a high five? And maybe it's not even a high five. Maybe it's like a high three. And that's cool, right? Just one little thing that makes you feel like I'm moving in the direction of my dreams. We got to keep our dreams alive. They require, it's like a little ember in a little flame. Like we need to give it oxygen. We need to stoke that fire even a teeny little bit to prove to ourselves that, again, and it's a dialogue we have, and we don't even know we do this, and it's a sort of a psychology thing. It's like, I'm the kind of person who is building. I'm the kind of person who is getting ready to, I'm the kind of person, I'm a writer. I'm a runner. I'm ready, and here's my plan. And I'm excited. And wow, I learned today that I need to get this kind of shoe. And I learned I have to get these orthotics, and I ordered them, and they're coming on Amazon. And I'm really excited because this is one step closer to me coming through that finish line.
I love that because you're teaching your brain
Yeah.
who you're becoming, because we cannot rise above the perception of ourselves, and that's why
Yeah.
we will self-sabotage all the time if we don't
Yeah.
believe that something is possible. But if we start taking small actions and start saying, no, I'm doing this, I'm running the
Yes.
a marathon, I'm taking that job, I'm running the business, it's almost
Yep.
like our brain's job is to make our thoughts true or real. It's like, okay,
Right.
our I think our only job is to change our thoughts
Mhm.
and redirect our brains to, because at the end of the day our brains will gather evidence of what it believes in. So I love
Yes.
how you're saying this. And obviously, we need to be careful of getting to um the cycle of research. I just need more information. I need one more workshop. I need one more podcast. I need one. No, you need
Yeah.
just to start taking the action.
Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned about in your talk, it was like research that shows that only 8% of people feel astonishingly alive.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of giving people clarity of what it means, like deconstructing concepts into behaviors. Because I think
Mhm.
once we have that clarity, we know what we're looking for. We know how we should, act, and we can
Mhm.
embody it.
Mhm.
Having said that, what does it mean to feel astonishingly alive?
Yeah.
And are there any behaviors associated with, living in this, mental state?
Yes. Love this. You know how I referred earlier to that framework of living wider and deeper? This
Hmm.
is this 8%, and what you're referring to is based on my research of people self-identifying in whatever quadrant they land in. So let's picture this. If widening your life has to do with vitality, the fun, the cool stuff, deepening it has to do with meaning, purpose, connection, spirituality, the good, literally the deeper stuff. You get to the feeling of being astonishingly alive anytime you are positive on the widening of vitality and positive on the deepening of meaning. So if you could say to yourself, if you're more than a 5 out of 10 on both, well, you know what? And maybe for some of us, maybe it's more than a 7 out of 10, but that feeling of like, yeah, you know what? My life's wide enough right now. I'm doing some fun stuff. I'm going to that, pottery class. I'm learning some stuff, or yeah, I'm checking out Buddhism. I'm feeling pretty cool. I volunteered a couple months ago. I feel good. Then that feels like you get to say to yourself, yeah, you know what? Astonishingly alive. Now, I'm going to be honest. I chose the word astonishing, and I realized that it sets us up to feel like it needs to look and be fancy and glitzy and impressive. Who cares what other people see on the outside? And my version of an astonishingly alive life would make other people fall asleep, because my version is really snoozy. Like, I love a night on the couch with a cat, a husband, and wine, and a movie, and like that for me is like awesome. But someone else would think, oh my gosh, like I need to be out at a rave, or I don't know,
Yeah.
at some kind of cool thing.
Yeah.
But you do you. So it's that when we know deep in ourselves, and the good news is that most of us are pretty able to tell. We have that sense. If I was to say to you now, scale of 1 to 10 about how wide is your life with the feeling of being vitality alive, like with the joy, with the experiences, where would you be? We kind of have that sense. Like, I'll be honest, right now, I feel like I have enough meaning in my life, largely because of the work I do. And I'm also helping my dad transition into, I don't know, a senior's home. It's meaningful stuff. It's really freaking hard, but it's meaningful. And then, but I'm also admitting that I'm feeling like I don't have enough vitality. And so that puts me in the category called meaningfully bored. And this, by the way, comes from you can take a quiz. If you go to my website, there's a quiz that you'll get your results and you'll get a guide to explain the results to you. And it's in the book, of course. But I am right now feeling meaningfully bored. So I've got meaning, but not enough vitality. And that for me is this sense of, okay, honey, what do you want to do about it? And right now, in all honesty, like I'm just kind of going, okay, right now for the next little while I'm getting my dad transitioned, it's going to probably be a lot of meaning and not a lot of fun. But it's up to, where do I want to insert a little bit of fun? Where do I want to make sure, wait a minute, what makes me feel alive? I could still be conscious about including a few doses. And so I know, for example, that the husband and I, in the midst of all this, planned a weekend away to go to wine country, and we're going to visit a friend and just have, it's only going to be like 1.5 days. It's fast, but that's enough for me to feel like, oh, I did a thing. It's fun. I lived a little amidst all this insanity, you know? So astonishingly alive is relative to what makes you feel like you are getting enough vitality and enough meaning to feel like, oh, I'm doing, like, again, back to that idea about I'm doing this like justice. And again, not so that someone can judge you, but so that you feel enough that like, I'm showing up. I'm participating in life. I'm getting some good stuff. I'm wringing the cloth out of life. I'm enjoying it. Does that make sense? And like, how can I ask you, like, where would you feel when you think about the vitality widening and then the meaning, the deepening? Where would you feel today?
Well, first of all, it does make sense, and even I think we tend to we kind of want to see, or we have the propensity of seeing everything black and white. So I'm either having a lot of fun or not fun at all. But then you're showing, hey, we can sprinkle some fun here and there. We can just a day and a half might not be a lot, but it might be enough at that point, and then I can just do more in the future. It doesn't have to be if it's not too much, then it's nothing. And I think that for a lot of things in life, we live in the greatest great area that, but it's hard for people to comprehend that, and they just like to feel in the opposite, either black or white. When it comes to me, honestly, even though what I'm doing is hard, even what I'm doing is just trying to grow a podcast, an audience, a business, one of the things I enjoy the most is having this kind of conversation. This what really really lights me up, is having the depth conversation, and not only learning about new things, but what I experience on the podcast, I rarely have it out there. It's hard to have this kind of conversation with people on a daily basis, and this just fills me up. I don't see this particular part of my business, of the podcast, as work. I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm having an awesome conversation. I could literally have, just because I don't do it because of editing, and people don't like long podcasts. I could talk for 2 3 4 hours easily with topics.
Marathon podcast.
Yeah, it would be amazing. But that has what giving me sort of meaning and purpose, in a way
Mm.
that I understand the I follow my curiosity. I think that's what makes me enjoy this so much. I don't try to target an audience like, okay, people are talking about crypto, people talking about AI, or people talk. No, to me it's like, what lights me up? What am I curious to know about? And people that really spark that curiosity in me, that's what I enjoy. If you, from 1 out of 10, I would probably say 7. I still struggle a lot. It's a lot stressful. It's scary because you don't know what is going to happen in the future. I went all in. I decided to just do freelance on the side to sort of pay my bills. And every now and then it's like ups and downs. And
Mm-hmm.
it's terrifying, but at the same time, it's like, do I really? It's almost like funny. I listened to an interview. They were interviewing Steve Harvey probably 10, 15 years ago. And they asked him, how was his transition from whoever he was to be a comedian? I said, well, I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have any choice. I don't remember when I was watching that video. It's like, okay, that is nonsense. You always have a plan B. You always have another choice, because you can always find a job if that doesn't work out. Once I started the podcast, I realized what he meant. You truly feel there's no other way. I mean, this has to work, because you cannot see yourself doing something that you don't enjoy at all
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore. And that's what keeps me pushing forward and trying to make this happen. So only by following, once again, going back to the point, only by following that intuition that my body was telling me, you need to pursue this. And somebody like me that was a lot of introverted, shy, with social anxiety, I would have never imagined myself like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, doing this. And once I started doing it and started getting positive feedback, I realized when you follow your intuition, you can never be wrong. So that has been very fulfilling to me. So I would say 7 out of 10. Still terrifying, but here we are.
Is I love that's the best thing. It's still terrifying, but
Fine.
here we are. And is that not the ride of life, right? And I love your point about following your intuition. It's that but here's where with our intuition, I think so many of us. I had lunch with a friend yesterday, and she's so cool because she's deciding what to do with her career. She's kind of winding it down and different. And she's like, I need a pause to figure out what I want. And I was like, wait a minute, a pause? Because like some of us, we're just like, go, 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 go. And you know, the expression, like it's hard to see the label from inside the jar. Like you're just in it and you don't know. So this idea about, are you giving yourself just a beat, a space to stop? And maybe it is a 1-day retreat by yourself, or maybe if you can take time, or just even just asking introspective questions, or like doing my pre-mortem. It's like, what is the thing that, what is there a whisper? Is there that yearning or calling or thing that I just really would love to do that maybe I've been pushing it off because I don't know how to do it. That's a good, reason to not do it is I don't know how to start a podcast. Well, people figure it out every day, right? Or it's that idea, like if it keeps coming back to you and it is your intuition, my question is, are you listening? And are you being silent enough in the moments where you will listen to the call? And if you do get the call, are you going to ignore it? Or are you going to snuff the life out of it before it even has a chance to shine?
That reminds me, I don't know if you have read the book The Alchemist.
Mm-hmm.
Once he's in the oasis before leaving, and he wants to stay with the girl, he's been told, okay, you will have a nice life with your uh, wife here, and you're gonna make decent money, and you always have that voice until that voice will just quiet forever because you never follow it. And I think that part of the regret comes down to, after so many years of ignoring that voice because we are scared, we're terrified, that voice is no longer there. That voice that should guide us in life to what we're supposed to do. I do believe, and this is kind of in the spiritual and philosophical realm, in a way that it's funny. You can have a twin brother or a twin sister. You can have the same upbringings, the same experiences, and both of you are going to have complete two different goals in life. You're going to see life. And I wonder if we're just already predisposed to, or it's like almost in our soul or DNA or body to just follow that particular goal. Because nobody ever told me, or I didn't grow up in an environment where this was, like something that would be good to do, or to pursue, but it was innate, it was in me. So listening to that voice, and as your friend said, I need that quiet time because we live in a very distracted world. We are always glued to our screens, and it's hard to be in silence. It's hard to be voice, hard to be with our own thoughts. And once we allow ourselves to do that, we can start listening to that internal voice, like, go there.
Hmm. Yeah, I love this. That's why I think listening to like podcasts like yours get you thinking. Hiring a coach who can help you to excavate and have these thoughts and questions. And then I guess you're highlighting for me this difference about you. We can become aware. We can do what I call the pre-mortem all day long and get all this insight, but at some point we got to do something about it. And I think that's the difference between a life that feels lived and a life that doesn't. The difference between a very well crafted life of dreams and including bucket lists and including strategies and plans and like a really well thought through, this is what it would take for me to feel alive. But if we're not pressing the go button, then oh golly, what a shame that is. Because again, of the aforementioned reasons, because we're busy and scared and think we're going to do it later. And so my question is, I usually boil it down to just like, what's one small thing that you can do that shows you to no one else, but to you, that you give a shit. And I actually even say like, you have to give two shits about your life, because giving it, like, it does take effort, and it does take not only the thinking and reflecting and going, yeah, I want to write a poetry book. Damn it. I'm going to do this. And then it's rather than then going, hee, and then going and just answering a bunch of emails and going on with your life saying, well, what would that look like? So I'm really scared, but like, what would that mean that I would start to draft a poem tonight? Oh, no, it couldn't be tonight. No. Okay, but when? So I think it's like, what's one small thing you can do? And that action is the thing that's fueling. And that action is the thing that can help to show you and builds, and it does create more momentum. And that then is the difference between what existential psychologists call a life that's lived versus getting to the end and fearing that like a life left unlived is what causes a lot of people death anxiety. Because you have, like, back to that example, if you've been pining after doing this poetry book, but you never did it, then you're going to get to the end and feel like, oh God, death is scary to me because I have all these dreams that are still stuck inside me. I got to get these poems out.
Yeah, it's almost like redefining trusting yourself, because I feel that we believe that trusting ourselves is our ability to do things, when in reality it should be knowing that we're going to that we're going to be able to figure it out as we go. And that's the scary part, that we don't know if we're going to be able to figure it out as we go. Well, you have made it this far. I mean, you have won 100% of your bad days. You're undefeated. I mean, every bad day you have had until today in your life, you have been able to overcome those. So I think if we reframe and even with, writing the poetry books, like, okay, I don't even know how it's going to do, whether it's going to be great or bad or whatever. It's like, or I don't even know how to start. You'll figure it out. You never have all the answers. You can, and I suffer from that a lot, because I would just try to see the next 10, 20, 30, 50 steps. It's like, can you just see the next one? Obviously, if I just see the next one, I won't be able to predict what is going to go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about the overthinking, and we get trapped in this overthinking, trying to predict and control the outcome, which we cannot control at all. And once we make peace with that, it's like, okay, let's
Yeah.
just go, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I like your point about trusting. I think that we're going to figure it out. Like all these things we go through in life, like we did somehow figure out how to be an employee on day one. We figured out, and we didn't like how to fall in love or how to, we did these things, and we're going to find our way, and we're going to stumble. And that's cool, because that's all just fodder for cool stuff later. And it makes the highs look better compared to the lows. And we're going to do it. The question is, are there things you want to do that you're still not doing? And if it gives you a little bit of heartburn, okay, cool. Now's your chance to do it. And I mean, let's be honest, there's a ton of stuff that we want to do, long to do, places we want to visit, things we want to do that we're never going to have time to do. And that's fine. We all know that there isn't enough time to visit all the places or do all the things, but prioritize them. That's the thing. It's like insight. What do I want to do? What would make me feel alive? What would make me feel like I'm living with width and depth? And then what's one thing I can do? One thing at a time, systematically, and overriding any of that conscious fear, overriding it and using, unfortunately, the tool we have, which is the awareness of the fact we're just temporary. Because again, that's the real thing. If you knew you were going to live forever, ever and ever and ever, infinity, it's a very long time, it's forever, the motivation just doesn't really exist. Like I wouldn't be motivated to go back to, I mean, maybe I would go back to school. I don't know. But the things that we think we do it because we know that maybe time is limited. So let's use that to our advantage. Moral of the story.
Yeah, there's no sense of urgency at all.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Jodi, love this conversation. I could go for another hour or two
Yep.
easily. But as a closing question, if you could give people just one question to ask
Mm-hmm.
themselves to stay aligned with an intentional life, what would it
Mm-hmm.
be?
Mm-hmm. How much are you willing to befriend the Grim Reaper? Are you willing, I mean, keep him at a distance, but are you willing to let the idea of scarcity in and not dwell, but then use that to say, what would make me feel alive? How do I do the opposite of what the Grim Reaper wants? But again, are you willing to have a relationship with death, knowing that it can really spice up your life?
Love that. It would give people a lot to think about and to realize, well, as you said, I can see it as a negative thing, as a victim. So, or we're all gonna die, and then what's the point? Or we're all gonna die. I might as well just, just leave this world, swinging, right? Just let's just trying to hit a home run, and if not, well, at least we tried. At least we
Oh,
tried.
I love it.
Yeah, Jodi, a complete pleasure. Honestly, one of the most enjoyable conversation I had in a while. But where can people find your work with you, buy your book, anything?
Oh, thanks for asking, Daniel. And I've loved this chat with you too. I feel so energized. I'm over at 4000mondays.com, and there's links to buy the book there. You Only Die Once is what it's called. And I do, yeah, anytime you need a speaker for an event to get you riled up to live, that's what I love to do. Love to meet you.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Jodi. It was a pleasure. And I'll definitely have to bring you on again in the future because I had all the questions. Like, it happens all the time. I have a bunch of questions and I can never go through all of them.
Right. Well, we'll do life and death part two.
For sure.
All right. Thank you.